And Brother Yeshiah.
Good evening.
Um, I'm pretty sure everybody is inquisitive about your books and the path that you took to get here. So I'm going to just ask you a few questions. Is that okay with you?
I appreciate that. Not a problem.
Okay. Um, so we understand that you've written books. Would you please tell me the titles and the purpose of the books?
The book, first off, pardon, giving honor and praise unto Yah, creator and maker of heaven and earth. The book, Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68. That book, brothers and sisters, and elders included, is written to help set truth back in the earth. The subtitle of such is History Untold to the Masses. Due to the fact that many doubt the authenticity of the Old Testament, and many doubt the authenticity that Black people make when we say we are the children of Israel of the Bible. What we've decided to do in coming out with this book is to show the connection between archaeology, history, linguistics, as well as historical events, which some might call past events, to show how ancient Israel went into ancient lands such as Egypt, such as Ethiopia, and migrated west to Western Africa. And then via the Atlantic slave trade in great quantities was brought over here to the Western Hemisphere. We attempt to do this through prophecy and do what some call the process of deduction. By reading Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, verse 45 in particular, we begin to see that it says, these curses shall pursue thee and overtake thee. So we just can't pinpoint one direct aspect and say this part of Deuteronomy 28 can only be talking of that. So therefore, it became incumbent for us to respond back to the Christians, back to the Egyptologists, the Kemetic community, and others on why we state what we state. Now, in light of that, in that book that I wrote, Deuteronomy 28, 15 and 68, I cite an author who stated that Jerusalem was depopulated by the Christians when the children of Israel was cast out of their land. So that's why I state we want to talk about us as Exodus 4:22 says, as the Son of God, one, two, as the fact of saying of who the true and living God is, and three, the fact that we are the children of the true and living God. And the reason why we're going through what we're going through is what you would call a father chastening his son. So these are the situations that we see ourselves going through as a people in this day and time. The book proposes a solution to the problem of the Black man, woman, and child. And that is to say, for one, love one another, take care of one another, respect one another, and by that we will by default earn the trust of one another. So in a nutshell, that's what that is in that particular regard.
Nice.
The
Understood.
the other book, entitled Old Testament Israelites Respond to Messianic Israelites. That book right there was a book I did not even want to come out with. That is a book that I was encouraged to come out with. The reason why I didn't want to come out with that is due to the controversy of such book. However, having many brothers and sisters who deem themselves as messianic, as friends, and so forth and so on, if you truly love your people, then you will want them to understand what the truth of the matter is, which is why that book is subtitled No Disrespect Intended. In that book, I cite less than 10 different sources. The genre of that particular book, brothers and sisters, is to let it be known for edification purposes on why we say we're Old Testament based. What do we say of the prophecies concerning Daniel 7:13, such as the situation of Isaiah 53, such as the situation of Daniel chapter 9, verse 26 and verse 25 previous to that? What do we say concerning the understanding of Psalms 22? You know, when it says they pierced my hands and my feet. These are things that are discussed in that particular book right there. I already know and understood that there will be people who disagree with the content of the book, but it's still presented for edification purposes. The other book, Hebrew is Easy, Part 1. Obviously, there will be a Part 2, Creator willing. The goal of that book is just to show how easy Hebrew is, to identify the Hebrew alphabet and to understand the vowels. Once you understand the alphabet, the sounds that the letters make, and then once you understand the sounds of the vowels, you automatically become a reader. It's easy. It's easy to read Hebrew. My idea in coming up with that is you will learn from the alphabet to the vowels, then you become a reader. Once you become a reader, you get a dictionary. Once you get a dictionary, you build your everyday vocabulary. Once you build that, you build your grammar. By that point, you're already making sentences. So at that point, right after you done graduated from alphabet knowledge, vowel knowledge, acquiring your own particular dictionary that you want, you already knowing how to read from that particular point, you build your grammar, your vocabulary, and then you're automatically a speaker. You can become a speaker and literally fluent in less than a year. Because we have to think when we speak of fluent, we only talk about certain things on a repetitive basis. How you doing? Good morning, good night. Is everything okay? I went to the job today. This happened. Usually, my day was like this. I went there. Ani nasati la aboda. I traveled to work. Ani abati takat roshi. I worked under my manager. Those kind of things. So if you have the understanding of how Hebrew works, you will begin to see how easy it is to format sentences.
Okay. What inspired you to become an author?
When I read the book, Babylon and Timbuktu, may my mother rest in peace. She was the one who encouraged me to be a reader, very heavily. And it kind of, in a way, and I don't regret it, because I don't regret my upbringing like that. It kind of had a backlash. And what I mean by that is, I remember if I did something wrong, it would be, go to your room, get out my face. Like, oh, no, no, no. See, you're going to go in there and just start studying. I'm going to have to sit there and you know what I mean? Once it came down to that.
Enjoyed reading.
Right, once it came down to that. So putting me in a room wasn't a punishment. It was just for me. I was like, all right, I'll pick up a book off the shelf and keep on reading. But getting back to the point, my sister, of the question, what encouraged me to become an author? When I read Rudolph Windsor's book when I was 15 in 1995, I remember reading over 45 pages of it within one sitting. And so that right there was something that just inspired me. It was what I would call a page turner. You just want to read more and more and more of it. Now, 1995 is when I personally read the book Babylon and Timbuktu. Then I wound up getting books such as Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph Williams. I wound up getting books such as Valley of Dry Bones, also by Rudolph Windsor. I read my teacher's book called Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference in 1997 when I was 17. When I was 15, my mother got me the book They Came Before Columbus. And that inspired me to want to read outside of Hebrew or outside of Israelite understanding. It broadened it up to a world understanding without showing a disagreement with the House of Israel's understanding in many cases. So that's what made me begin to see that if I can look to people, may the Creator bless their lives, such as Rudolph Windsor, such as Kohen Mikael, may the Creator rest the soul of the elder who wrote the book They Came Before Columbus. I decided it would be a good idea for me to become a writer too. I first started working on a book, Deuteronomy 28:15-68, in 1999, but it did not come out until the year 2016 in its first version, and now in its updated version in 2018. So I realized from that point that it was a lot of time that has to be spent in putting a book together. I personally found that putting the table of contents for me was the most difficult part because you will have what you call a first draft, and then you have the second draft, and then you have the actual last piece of it, which you will present to the people.
Okay. So, in light of that, what do you hope to be the result of your book?
Alrighty, the result and intended result is to help set truth back in the earth. You will find that there will be people who will like you and there will be people who dislike you. And one of the things is, as the Most High told Joshua, says Kazakwa Amas, which means to be strong and of good courage. So Joshua had enemies. You understand? Joshua had people who didn't like him. And I'm not on the level of Joshua, but on the aspect of understanding of being strong and courageous also means that Solomon said the hand of the diligent makes rich. So the goal and the result that I hope to come up out of this is that it will make other people want to study and want to research the information.
So, what advice would you have for future authors?
Okay. I try to inspire brothers and sisters to become authors. I hear things such as, I don't know where to start. That's exactly where you start at, where you don't know. Get the paper that you're comfortable with, get the pen or pencil or writing instrument that you're comfortable with, and just start writing. Because your first draft is not what you're going to bring out to the people. You know, your second draft is not what you're going to bring out to the people. It's your third draft that you, or third or fourth, you understand, that you're going to bring out to the people. And so you start just writing one page or one sentence or one paragraph, and then you just go on from that particular point. The easier part now, this year being 2019, say perhaps that Wood of Windsor didn't have, to my knowledge, say that other authors of the past, even J.A. Rogers, who wrote the book 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, what they didn't have is, correct me if I'm wrong, the type of computers that we have today, like Windows 10 and everything. They didn't have, to the best of my knowledge, personal and public publications. And what I mean by that is I deal with a personal company that's called Lulu.com. That's where I publish my books through. Some others might deal with KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. Some people deal with going on through Amazon and just have Amazon publish their thing. So there's a lot of independent publishing companies today that didn't exist, say in 1980, say in 1970, say in 1960. So to be able to sit there and to have your literature out there and your information and your books out there easier today than it was, say, 30, 40 years ago, that's another incentive I think people should want to hop on, to sit there and get their publications out there. Your books can be anything based on from history, based on cookbooks or anything else. You understand? When you look at authors such as the lady who wrote a book, I forgot the name of the book, Queen Afua. She's one of the top leading females once it comes down to writing books about health. When you look at Jethro Kloss's book, and he's, for the lack of a better term, a white man, and he wrote the book Back to Eden. His book, he's gone and out of the earth, and people still talk about it. For instance, you see, so the point I'm saying is, like one brother told me, promote your brand, be about something and push forward toward that. And that's what I have to say concerning that. You can write a book about science, you can write a book about painting, you can write a book about a book. For instance, I'm not going to mention the person's name. I told a particular brother, you can write your book about moving from Brooklyn to down south and the transition with that. I told that, and I definitely won't present this person's name. I said to another person, I said, as a man knowing himself as Israel, you can write about being polygynous and let it be known how you sit there and survive through all of that. The problems that may come up, how do you deal with two different wives and so forth and so on. So what I'm saying, I'm just throwing these different ideas out. It's definitely for edification purposes that you can sit there and write a book, be it male, female, they are children that are authors, and I'll go so far as to say, as I spoke with a beautiful friend of mine this week, if you look at, may he rest in peace, Tukey, who helped start the Crip gang, he has books on Amazon. This man helped lead people to murder people. You have the innocent guy, Abu Jamal, that's writing books out of prison. And I'm not trying to sit there and diminish the authority. I'm just saying if you have people that's incarcerated, that's writing books, then there's no reason why somebody else cannot sit there and write any books. My point is there's no reason to not become an author. Mm.
So, how do you deal with the negativity and the haters that come along with being a public figure, being on, on YouTube? How do you deal with it?
Okay, you have to first also understand this. That's gonna come. There's a skater, I forgot her name too, pardon me, and she was known in the 1990s. She's a black woman, and she was known for doing the backflip, which they said is illegal. There were three other white men that's done it in the past, and it's always been illegal. And so the judges were hating on her, but she's always known for doing that backflip. The judges can't do that backflip. And so the point I'm saying is the people who hate on you will be people who cannot do what you do, and they unfortunately don't know where their light and their shine and their aspect is. The aspect of hating that we're speaking of is when someone, as pointed out, doesn't know his or her position. and they try to sit there and spend time talking about somebody else and how somebody, well, they're doing this, but they didn't doing that, you know. And the point is, if you feel it should be done, then why not do it? I'm not going to hate on Rudolph Windsor because he's an author. I'm not going to hate on my teacher, Kohen Mikael. You understand? I'm going to sit there and use them as a catalyst. You understand? To say, if they can do it, I can do it too. You understand? So that comes with the situation. The first thing also to point out is you're going to have to know how to identify, say in this instance, the aspect of authoring on publication, how to identify what a hater is in that particular regard is when they would be a said good friend, but you never see them advertise your product. That's one. That kind of spirit is, they may say, okay, yeah, you know, that's a cool thing or whatever, but they're doing as least amount of help to sit there and help you because they feel if they are quoting helping you, they won't get their own personal shine. And so that's one way. Another aspect is you will begin to sit there and see, having never read it, they will see it and then try to speak bad about it. There's a proverb in the Bible that talks about that. That says the buyer says it is bad, just because you realize either one, you couldn't afford it, or two, you can't do what that person is doing. So there's a proverb in the Bible that says that. The buyer says it is bad, but deep down they want to either be inspired to do so, but they don't want to have to be humbled, quote unquote, to have that person as their more or their mora, which is a female teacher. I do Hebrew classes, and you asked me about the aspect of YouTube, and I'm thankful to the Creator that I don't have like what they would call a hating bone in my body, because there is a sister that also does Hebrew classes, and as I pointed out on this channel before, her Hebrew classes are better than mine. I promoted her Hebrew classes on this channel in a video called "Promoting Businesses of Good Business Partners," because I don't have the patience to make and promote puzzles for children. I don't have the patience, but she does. So if you can see that someone is gifted by the Most High to have a certain tolerance or a light to be able to do something, then you should encourage that. You don't sit there and have the mindset, well, I'm not going to let their products be known just because I'm going to be a hater on the sideline. There is a post that a friend of mine out of the South made, and he presented it that said, we're going to keep the language cleaner. Black people sometimes will let the ship sink just because they can't be the captain. So in other words, if I can't sit there and be the one that's being seen, then forget the whole entire situation. That right there is straight ridiculous. And so the hating has a future effect. If you look at for what it's worth, and I'm not the biggest fan of profanity, but when you look at for what it's worth in Ice Cube, the rapper, when he made that song called No Vaseline, there's a line in there that he said, you got jealous of me when I made my own company. And so the point I'm saying is when you already have a drive for something and a passion for something, you will be moved like fire and like water. When you're dealing with fire, the only thing that could quench that is water, unless you just, you know, let the fire die out by itself. And water, heaven forbid there's a flood, it's going to go in every crevices that it can sit there and go. So when you're doing research for a presentation on YouTube or to publish a book, make sure you get as much information on it as possible. You don't let somebody say, well, you don't teach for this class or you don't teach for that class. You do what the Most High God has given you the light to do. And that's what's very important. And that was told to me from an elder in the house of Yeshiah. You take that light that you got and you sit there and you let that shine. Like it says in Isaiah, arise and shine for the light has come upon thee. We ask children in many cases, what do you want to be when you become older? There are adults who still, and there's no knock on adults, who still wonder what they want to do in life. My other point to make, my sister, is this. When a human being is born, if 2 years after that person's birth, they're not walking or talking somewhat, they would say that their child is what you call retarded or slow or something of that sort. So when you're an adult and 2 years later and there's no growth, what do you call that? So hopefully that's sufficient.
It is. Thank you. Okay, so do you intend to write more books?
Most definitely. Giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Definitely intend to write more books. Hebrew is Easy Part 2. Another book I intend to come out with, I'm thinking of the title from Assyria to America. The tribes of Israel is in derision. And so, once it comes down to that, I've gone to museums such as the Levine Museum in North Carolina, such as the Schomburg Museum in New York, and being able to look at records that is not commonly known. I'm like, there's no reason why that we cannot sit there and gather this and make sure you cite your citations out of respect, and then just come out with the information as such.
Okay. Why is history your passion?
History became my passion over a weird situation. It's two things that happened. My mother, may she rest in peace, bought me a Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, for lack of a better term. And when I got that, I began to just read and just read and just read. I went to the congregation one Shabbat called Kosher, where I started as a child. And I asked the Moreh there, may he rest in peace, his name was Moreh Yosef. And I asked him and I said, Moreh, is it true from what I was reading in the Tanakh that the Philistines stole the Ark of the Covenant? Now, no disrespect intended to Moreh Yosef, but he knew good and well. In the years I've known him, from 1982 until 1990, he's never personally taught me about what happened in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 5. Because the Shabbat portions there only went from Genesis 1:1 to Deuteronomy 34, Genesis 1:1 to Deuteronomy 34. And so there was hardly ever we went into the books of Judges or Samuel or anything of that sort. So when I mentioned it to him, he said, yes, the Philistines did take the Ark of the Covenant by theft. And I remember him giving me a deep and keen look. And he said to me in front of everyone that was there, he said, keep studying. Because he knew he didn't teach me that. And this is no knock on him, but that's what you're supposed to do. It's not saying that he's my father because he wasn't biologically, but if you look at Joseph in the situation, he had a dream and he told his father, you understand what I mean? His father, Joseph, didn't get upset or uncomfortable like Jacob did when his son told him about the dream. I'm not bowing down to you, but he said he kept the saying in his mind, like, there's something to this, you know. And my teacher called him Mikael in Hebrew. Not to be haughty, I was, when we was in Hashaba in New York, when he had the class called the Kita Sika, I was the only male there under the age of 20. There were other grown men there, but I was the only male child there, 13, 14 years old, that was going, as you may say, hard body, going to the classes. And now, as you see, there's a Hebrew book out. And so, you never know who you inspire to get to do things. You never know who you inspire. You know what I mean? Once it comes down to that, James Brown is the reason why Michael Jackson became a star. He told him that. Michael Jackson, before he passed, told James Brown, before he passed, obviously, he said that there would be no Michael Jackson without you. And I state this, there would be, quote, no more Yeshiah. There would be no Hebrew book that I written without being inspired by my teacher in Hebrew, call him Mikael. And so to land back, not piggyback, because we don't do pigs in Israel, but to land back on the question about hating, when you refuse to acknowledge those who preceded for you, that helped pave the way for you, that is a form of hating. You understand? When you refuse to do that. This is why you find people, and I am no way or shape, form, or fashion a fan of Eddie Griffin. But one of the things I'll say to his credit is he did acknowledge Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor as setting the tone for him to be able to break certain barriers and doors down. If my teachers and those who inspired me, such as Kohen Mikael, such as Rudolph Windsor, such as Ima Shoshana in her Hebrew book, such as the work that Ima Naami has done, such as the work made the Most High Blessed Soul Don Doratio has done in publications. If these people were not in my life, there would have never been me trying to sit there and pass that baton on. And so that's something to be honored and respected once it comes down to that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I think there's something else I wanted to say. If you can ask me that last question again, I think there was another point in my mind.
What made history your passion?
Yes. Now, here's the other weird part. Or should I say the weird part? What made me want to get into that is I was okay with reading and math was okay. History I saw wasn't something that wasn't, quote, being tackled. And by tackled, I mean dealt with or presented in many, many cases. certainly by youth in the 1980s. I remember having to be home because of the violence that was being done outside when I was a child. And so I remember starting to read Compton's Encyclopedia and wanted to get into that. My babysitter, may she rest in peace, named Emo Yisrael. We used to live in Vanderveer, which they now refer to as Flappers Garden. And those in the 1980s, and when they know about Vanderveer, about Front Page, you know who Emo was. If you were in Vanderveer, which they now call Flappers Gardens, in the 1980s, and you knew about what they call Front Page or Nostrand and Foster, everybody knew who Emo Yisrael was. She was an elder who wasn't a part of any camp, but she knew herself as Israel. And I remember the gift she gave me when I turned 6 was a composition book in order to sit there and keep on writing. Now a brother's working on his 4th book. So you see what I mean? The point I'm saying is once it comes down to that, that's what it became a passion for. Mm-hmm.
Well, being that it is your passion,
Yes.
why do you think so many of our people despise it or are not fans of it?
I believe that's the case because we don't know where we belong in it. Let me give a personal example. I can say I'm not a fan of hockey because I'm not a fan of doing any kind of ice skating. I don't see the point in the wisdom and having, I don't even know if the proper name of that stick is to hit the hockey puck into the thing. What's the point of it? And so I'm not hating on hockey. I'm using that as an example. My little girl has a puppy. She washes this dog. She walks this dog. She has a magazine that comes to her house where her and her mom live about how to groom and take care of dogs. And she talks about becoming a vet. I could care less personally about grooming and taking care of a dog. But I see that's in her mind and her passion. So I'm not going to stifle her dream because some parents do that and it can affect their child negatively. Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm gonna be, into history, you got to be too. No, as long as you're not into anything negative. My mother, may she rest in peace, like, she would sit there and get books, and not necessarily be like quote the biggest fan of history of that sort. You understand? But yet, sorry about that, brothers and sisters. But yet she would be the one responsible for me to get books or to have books and to sit there and have the publications to be able to be done. Later on, you understand what I mean? One day she walked in the house when we was living in Queens, and excuse me, a situation she saw on the city bus. She said, Yeshiah, she said, you got to get your book out. You got to get your book out. And then she never saw the actual publication of the book. And that's another thing that has my passion and my dream to go hard. I dedicate the future book in honor of my father, Frank Hutchison, and my mother, Ima Nifla Abad Asher Ben Yisrael. So, once it comes down to that, that's something that I take very near and dear to me. That is something that if it says commit your thoughts, commit your works to the Most High and your thoughts will be established. When you're saying I'm giving honor and praise to the creator of heaven and earth, that's something that is very, very important once it comes down to that. So we believe that the Most High will guide the people if you were meant to be that light, as opposed to trying to sit there and be that light. That's not something that you have to try to go hard for. You can stay in your lane and still go hard. You don't have to go into other people's lanes in order to sit there and try to go hard for a particular aspect. So, the last question again, because there was a point that I keep coming back in my head. I'm sorry.
Why do you think that people despise history, our people?
All right, thank you for that.
Or don't favor it.
Okay, to land back on what was stated in regards to not knowing our place in it. Again, I believe that is the crux on why it is. And so you will find anything like I will find grooming a dog boring, I will find hockey boring. You understand? If you don't find where you belong into it at, then of course you're going to find it boring and useless. So once a person knows where they fit in history at, then I believe that it will become much more sensible. One of the things I attempt to point out in this particular book for the people to see, all right, Deuteronomy 28, 15 and 68, History Untold to the Masses, which you can acquire on lulu.com, lulu.com, is to sit there and have it to be known for edification purposes, where we come from, why we state what we state, and the fact that not every black person in the Western Hemisphere is an Israelite, and not everybody in the continent of Africa is a Hamite. There are many Israelites in the continent of Africa. You understand? And there are many Israelites over in this Western Hemisphere. The book, as pointed out, focuses on the black man, woman, and child that you might say from Boston, Massachusetts to South Central Los Angeles, because that's where I personally come from, so I can relate more to that particular aspect. But in a nutshell, in closing out, if a person doesn't know their land, their language, and their culture, you're always going to have a problem once it comes down to national and ethnic understanding. If a person cannot link to a particular culture, a land, and a language, then you don't know where on the earth, not trying to sound funny in that cliche, you don't know where on the earth you belong to at, or where on the earth you belong. And so with that, you will find what I call the hopscotch. And that's what I think happened in many cases with the said conscious community. Because you will go, say, for instance, Kemet, Kush, Nubia, the Noak, this one, that one. You would have to be able to show the connection between these different people. Now, what we're saying as far as Israel is that we are the true Israelites, descended from the maternal line of the Arameans and the paternal line of the Chaldeans, and was cast out of our land and wound up forming communities like you might see in Elephantine, Egypt, during the era of the Persian Empire, after Babylon fell. Then you might find about the Oxumite kingdom, as well as the Beta Yisrael or the Habesha that you might see in Ethiopia, among the hundreds of those in Nigeria that lay claim to being of the house of Israel. On this particular channel, there's a video called Simeon and Dan. And in that, I get in depth about the scattering of the tribe and the diaspora of the children of Israel. So everyone may not agree with our findings and our understanding, but we still wanted to present it out to the people.
And that ties in to the last question, which is why do you believe that Hebrew knowledge is important for our people to know?
Hebrew at one time was going to be the national language of this country. And that's been pointed out in history and so forth and so on. The guy, the man, may he rest in peace, Ishaka Musa Barashango, he wrote a book called African People and European Holidays, a Mental Genocide. In that book, he showed the evidence from the Washington Post in 1982, where they was talking about Hebrew being the national language of this country. That's one reference. Secondly, we have to understand why Hebrew was not chosen as the national language of this country after the aspect of them creating this in 1787 and so forth and so on. And that's obviously because of us. And the reason why I say that is because when I personally speak Hebrew, I noticed the responses back. It's like, what? How? Who? How? I'm asked questions like, why do you speak Hebrew? I'm like, what? What do you mean, why do I speak it? Where did you learn it? Did your parents know it? How many of y'all are there? How many of y'all speak this? And I'm like, really, to ask a man of his mother, that's kind of disrespectful, because you don't know a person's position with their mother, first off. Secondly, it's a form of arrogance because you expected somebody to not know. So now, when you expect me to not know something, that's going to not being like a child like mine. That's going to make me why can't I know? That's going to make me want to know it more. Mm-hmm. You understand? Once it comes down to that. Now, I believe that Hebrew, say the language for itself, will sit there and help people because, as far as the black man's identification, what I mean by that is, for one, knowing his role as a man and knowing the black woman and her role as a woman. And what do I mean by that? In Hebrew, the letter Hey, the letter Tau are feminine letters. And you cannot have the causative without that Hey letter, which is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, or the Hebrew 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet is listed in Psalms 119 in just about every Bible. Okay, so the fifth letter and the 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet shows the feminine aspect of the language. And so when we understand that there is a masculine form of aspects and a feminine form of aspects, you would find to where the man will want to be the alpha male. Like the Hebrew word aleph itself means clan, also means to teach, also means thousand. So when you look at the word aleph, you also find it formulated as the word aluf, which also means chief. So when you're looking at it in that particular case, you will begin to see and understand the deeper sides, because there is a deeper sides of this once it comes right down into it. Hebrew artifacts have been found throughout Mauritania, as pointed out in the book Babylon and Timbuktu. And another controversial aspect is the indigenous people of this land about their Hebraic claims that have been made, because you find the Los Lunas inscription with Hebrew on it, and that was found in what you call the state of Mexico, New Mexico. How do you find Hebrew writing in New Mexico? Because there were Hebrews that were traveling. But that's a whole nother subject. For that information, one more time, go to this book right here, and you'll begin to see more information on that. So hopefully that answered the question. No, the questions posed. My email for those interested is hkashub@yahoo.com. That's HKASHUB@yahoo.com. For those interested in the books that were spoken of earlier, you can look them up on lulu.com, LULU.com. Thank you for the time.
And thank you for the interview.
Ain't no problem. Tell them about my sister.
So long.
Hello.